Gorbachev arrives back in Moscow and is whisked home in the middle of the night as a new day dawns for the deposed Soviet president, for Russian President Boris Yeltsin, and for the Soviet people.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Moscow, Ted Koppel.
These barricades, these images of counter-revolution are the exception. We arrived in Moscow Wednesday afternoon local time to find a city that looked deceptively normal. Families wandering through the parks, traffic moving easily through the streets. Very few soldiers in evidence. Hardly a city under siege. No evidence at all in most parts of Moscow that the nation's president had been overthrown a scant 4 days ago. But behind the calm facade, the new government was already crumbling. And by this morning, Thursday morning, here in Moscow, Gorbachev was back. He flew into Moscow around 2 o'clock this morning. And while Boris Yeltsin waited for Gorbachev to pay a courtesy call, a thank you for your support visit at the headquarters of the Russian Federation, the once and apparently future president of the Soviet Union was driven to his country home on the outskirts of Moscow. It has been a day and a very long night of confusion bordering at times on near madness. While thousands of mostly young Russians maintained their defensive vigil around the Russian Federation building, what they call Boris Yeltsin's White House here in Moscow, wild rumors flew through the city. Raisa Gorbachev had committed suicide. She did not. Marshal Dmitry Yazov, the Soviet defense minister and one of the men who overthrew Gorbachev only 4 days ago, Yazov too had committed suicide. That also turned out to be a false rumor. Word spread that elite Soviet troops were about to storm Yeltsin's headquarters. The crowds outside reinforced their barricades, while inside sandbags were brought to Yeltsin's office to protect against gunfire from the outside. But gradually, in the offices of Yeltsin's top advisors, the sense grew that the tide was turning irrevocably in their favor. Gennady Barbulis, who is state secretary of the Russian Federation and perhaps Boris Yeltsin's top advisor, left no doubt tonight that Gorbachev will have to pay for the role that Yeltsin has played in bringing him back to power.
I
have no doubt that Gorbachev was trying to pursue a very noble purpose. However, his personal tragedy is that he has been trying to accomplish a radical reform within the rigid framework of the communist system. This is a totally hopeless endeavor, which subsequently leads to errors and even crimes.
Do you think he will have learned that that is impossible as a consequence of what has happened this week?
He has no alternative.
What does that mean in terms of the cooperation between President Gorbachev and President Yeltsin?
Boris
Yeltsin will continue to be committed to his political principles. We may respect Gorbachev as a personality. However, in case of our complete victory, we shall be entitled to dictate our own conditions as to what shape and rate the reform in our country will have. In another of the bizarre events that marked this extraordinary day, 3 planes this afternoon literally raced from Moscow to Gorbachev's vacation resort in the Crimea. 2 of the aircraft, and they arrived first, carried men who helped organize the coup against Gorbachev. They tried to strike a last-minute deal with the man they had ousted. Gorbachev turned them down. He made his pact, and he flew back to Moscow late tonight with the passengers of the 3rd plane, including Yeltsin's prime minister. What does the Yeltsin camp want? Several of Yeltsin's senior aides tonight told me that they want nothing less than a coalition government, in which, for example, a Gorbachev supporter might head the KGB, but a Yeltsin man would have to become defense minister. It is much too early to tell whether such an arrangement can actually be hammered out. But by late afternoon, outside Yeltsin's headquarters, appreciative crowds applauded as troops who had sided with Yeltsin began withdrawing from around the Russian Federation building. Even as the exhausted soldiers walked away, their mission apparently accomplished,
Diane Sawyer was at KGB headquarters, where she found a distinctly different mood.
A distinct mellowing of their position. For instance, they went out of their way to say to us things like, those tanks that came into the city were never meant to intimidate anybody. They couldn't imagine where we had got that idea. The tanks were simply there because it was an uncertain situation and they didn't know what would happen. They also said, whoever dreamed that we would have arrested Boris Yeltsin? No one ever intended to arrest Boris Yeltsin. So even by earlier afternoon, they were becoming the kinder, gentler KGB.
Even as the prospect of Gorbachev's return to Moscow gained currency in the streets of the Soviet capital, a bizarre hypothesis was being put forward in an interview that Diane Sawyer conducted with Eduard Shevardnadze, the former Soviet foreign minister and longtime Gorbachev supporter.
Shevardnadze was musing whether it was possible that Gorbachev was in fact trying somehow to strengthen his position in centralizing and controlling the government through this. But again, it was just amusing on his part, but a suspicion that is there and a little surprising. I just want to make clear, you're not confident enough of Gorbachev's heart to say absolutely he did not want a military takeover.
I have suspicions, but they're just suspicions. Just suspicions. I cannot say any more right now without proof, though it's all very strange. This is all very strange.
At the Russian Federation building late tonight, as staffers huddled around a television set passing on the latest rumors, I spoke with Moscow's deputy mayor, Sergei Stankievich, one of Boris Yeltsin's staunchest supporters. What of Shevardnadze's suspicion, I asked.
No, it's fantasy.
You don't believe that?
Absolutely.
Because?
Because it was impossible to invent such sophisticated performance.
But tonight, all these questions of precisely what happened and how were lost in the sheer joy of what seemed, earlier this week, like an unimaginable resolution to the crisis.
One thing that was really moving, as I sat with Shevardnadze this afternoon, was to see how even he, one of the architects of glasnost, one of the architects of reform, one of the really daring experimenters in increased freedom in the Soviet Union, even he was unprepared for the fact that it had taken to the extent it had. He told me, and tears began to well up in his eyes, that as he walked through that square and saw the number of people who had turned out and who were ready to put their lives on the line for the idea that had been introduced, his heart beat, and he realized that it was a different country than even he had thought, and certainly that it ever was before.
We'll take an extensive look at the remarkable developments of this last day and night when we come back with the former U.S. ambassador to Moscow, Jack Matlock, and with the man who used to be Mikhail Gorbachev's deputy spokesman.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Maytag.
Last year, thousands of people got rid of their old refrigerator to buy the Maytag refrigerator with a guarantee to the year 2000. Now, the rest of you have a chance. Buy one, and if it stops working before the year 2000, we'll buy it back. See a Maytag dealer for details. See a Maytag repairman in our commercials. The Maytag refrigerator with a guarantee till the year 2000.
I'd like to be under the sea in an octopus's garden in the shade.
Some kids take to swimming like a fish to water, and some don't. In fact, any child can drown in just 2 inches of water. Make the water safe for your child with the Red Cross Water Safety Program.
Under the sea in an octopus's garden in the shade.
When your employees train with the National Guard and Reserve, they learn to be better team players, better decision makers, and better leaders. It's training that makes them better at serving our country. And better when they come back to work for you.
Bill's back.
Be a hero. Give your employees the freedom to protect ours.
Diane Sawyer in Moscow, getting the story of the crisis from the inside. Boris Yeltsin, the turmoil, the turnaround. Diane Sawyer is there, primetime Thursday.
When Mikhail Gorbachev arrived here in Moscow in the middle of the night, a Soviet camera crew was present at the airport, and Gorbachev, looking exhausted, made an arrival statement. That statement has just been rebroadcast a few moments ago on Soviet television, and we bring it to you now.
В Москве было 2 часа ночи, когда на Внуковский аэродром приземлился, наконец, президентский самолет. На его борту был Михаил Сергеевич Горбачев, члены его семьи.
I would come out of the first section as soon as I can get to it, turn around and take it. And so the Soviet television has just played his remarks. It's not really on this one. It's his remarks at the airport. Let's go to those. And then you have to stop there. You have to break you to play the tape. You know, New York translate will translate the news conference and we'll break out of it and say in a moment we'll be talking to people here and there about you.
Michael Sergeyevich,
Michael Sergeyevich, if I can, I know this is a very late hour. For 3 days our country was extremely tense and in terrible alarm for its president, for its future, and for the fate of democracy. What can you say in these very first few minutes on this Moscow territory? The most important thing is everything that we've done after 1985 has already given its realistic fruits. It is bearing fruits. Our society, people have become different. And this has been the primary obstacle on the path of that adventure which a group of persons has embarked upon. And it, from the very beginning, and I will talk about this some more later, society should know about this, indeed the whole world should know about this, what exactly was being plotted and what they had expected to do to me, and what they were trying to get from me, and what it is that they did not succeed in getting from me. I will still make my statement about this. Tomorrow, at the latest, the day after, I will call a very broad conference for this. This they were not successful in. I congratulate our Soviet people who have both the feeling for responsibility and dignity at the same time, and a concern that this people would treat with a lot of respect that person whom they've trusted with the authority, and not some small group who, such a miserable group with very attractive slogans, is utilizing those difficulties which we all know so well about and which we are so concerned about and which we do intend to resolve. And we cannot be ambiguous about this. This group wanted to prompt these people, to push these people onto a path which would bring our entire society to a catastrophe. This didn't take place, and this is an enormous conquest and victory of perestroika. That which they tried to do to the president during these days, and with his family, when for 72 hours he's completely encompassed by troops and him and his family, and they wanted to break him. Well, nothing came of this. But that's just part of the question. Another part is that I am extremely appreciative and grateful to the Soviet people and for that principled position that the Russians have taken, to the President of the Russian Republic, Yeltsin, and to the Supreme Soviet of the Russian Federation, to all the deputies and all the working collectives who resolutely took up this path to combat this adventure. This is what we can truly be proud of. And the position which was also uncompromising and was fully responsible for everything that was taking place. We know of all our problems. We know them full well. These problems concern us. I've been carrying on this task even before I went off on vacation. And during my vacation, I concerned myself with that, with the foodstuffs, with the fuel and energy and finance, our ruble, the market condition, what will happen with our older population tomorrow. All of these concerns is what we have to resolve. But it is these people who took advantage of these difficulties during the transition period, and with this extreme tension and with what it is that awaits us in the future, this group that decided to realize under the pressure of these difficulties their own selfish, far-reaching plans in order to thrust our society into tragedy. That is an adventure, and I rebuffed it when their emissaries came to me to support this adventure. And I said that this will bring to ruin both them and our country. I was against it, and I demanded that immediately we would have a Congress convened, at least at the level of the Supreme Soviet. All the details of what took place in these days, I will still tell you about this. The president was blocked, isolated from the people, from the world, and was supposed to stand up and be steadfast. I think the goal was to break me morally, break the president morally, to break him and to influence his family. Well, nothing came of this. And first of all, because I was convinced that this wouldn't happen. Everything else I will tell you later. Mikhail Sergeyevich, thank you.
When we come back, we will analyze what we have just heard and also take a look at today's events, as I'm joined here in Moscow by the man who until just a few weeks ago was the deputy spokesman for Mikhail Gorbachev. And back in the United States, we'll be joined by the former U.S. ambassador to Moscow, Jack Matlock, who is now a consultant to ABC News. When we come back.
Every evening, we pack over 700,000 passengers onto our planes.
5 to 10. Before takeoff, check.
No drinks are served, no meals are prepared. Yet our customers love our service, like our UPS Next Day Air Letter. Guaranteed overnight delivery by 10:30 a.m. And for just $9.75, far less than other companies charge.
Check takeoff thrust.
No one seems to mind that there's no in-flight movie.
Did you know that when Alexander Graham Bell was about to invent the telephone, he stopped work because he ran out of money? Today at AT&T, we understand how important money is to a small business. So we developed AT&T Pro Watts, our discount calling plan that gives you AT&T quality at extremely competitive prices. At AT&T, almost half our business comes from small business. When you succeed, we succeed.
Friday starts with Family Matters at its new time.
Laura, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous. What happened to the rest of your pants?
Family Matters, then.
You're the kind of girl who would drop everything to babysit your little sister.
Well, you bet I would.
See ya.
Growing Pains, and The Boys Feel the Backdraft. Perfect Strangers, then.
We've got competition.
Who?
The Bradys.
Which sitcom family is the funniest?
Gosh, that's a pretty dress, Mr. Nielsen.
It's Hi Honey, I'm Home, Friday.
Sunday,
I hate math. Too many numbers.
Corky burns the midnight oil,
I keep trying. I don't get it.
but can't seem to see the lights.
Get up, you're going to be late for school.
I'm not going. I'm quitting.
Life goes on. Then, homegrown hiccup cures. Painting parties and diving for dads are all part of the summer fun on America's Funniest Home Videos. And our experts always leave you laughing on America's Funniest People. Sunday.
Everybody, stand up and cheer.
This season, there's only one place to turn for the best in college football. For the nation's top teams, the outstanding matchups, and the classic rivalries. For an action-packed schedule loaded with the biggest games in the Big Ten, Pac-10, and the CFA.
General Norman Schwarzkopf officially leaves the Army next week. Now, by viewer request, the interview that had everyone talking.
On 2020 Friday.
Tomorrow, join us for continued coverage of the crisis in the Soviet Union. And back home, the challenges of preserving Yellowstone Park on Good Morning America tomorrow.
Joining us now live from his home in Tennessee, the man who until 10 days ago was the U.S. ambassador here in Moscow and who is now an ABC News analyst and consultant to ABC News, Ambassador Jack Matlock. And joining me here in Moscow, a man who until June of this year was deputy spokesman for President Mikhail Gorbachev and is now an analyst of Soviet affairs, and that is Sergei Grigoriev. Mr. Grigoriev, the truth now, are you surprised by how quickly this thing was turned around?
Well, I think that on Monday, on the first day of the coup, we all knew it will not last for a long time. We're surprised. My prediction was it's going to be all over by next Monday. It's all over even earlier, but it's because of the people here that showed magnificent things and magnificent courage, as well as Boris Yeltsin and his people, who really knew well how to organize and mobilize people.
Tell me something. Why do you think that the men who held power for only 3.5 days, as it turned out, did not mobilize the military, use the military, and arrest Yeltsin right away?
Well, first of all, I think that the plotters were trying to use the old kind of mentality. They thought that fear is enough, that the Germans' fear in the Soviet people is so strong that they can do everything. And the other reason, and it's the main reason, is that the reforms initiated by Mikhail Gorbachev left such a profound impact in the Soviet society that the Soviet people can no longer live the way they used to be living for decades. That now the Soviet people have the feeling of pride, and they knew how to defend themselves and defend their democracy.
Ambassador Matlock, as you listen now to Mikhail Gorbachev, and I think you'll agree, he looked like a very weary man when he arrived here in Moscow about 2 o'clock in the morning. As you listen to what he had to say, give me your analysis. What do you think will be changed about the Mikhail Gorbachev who comes back now from the Mikhail Gorbachev who was overthrown just 4 days ago?
Well, I think first of all, he has the possibility, and it's more than a possibility, probably a necessity, to move towards some really radical reforms. I think that is his inclination, but even if it weren't, I think that this will be a demand of the Yeltsin forces, and one which they very rightly can enforce. Second, it seems to me that he now is in a position to distance himself from the conservative party apparat, and if he will do that, I think that his popularity will begin to climb, so that he has possibilities which he did not have before, because the people who turned against him were like a millstone around his neck now for several months.
It is quite clear, or at least it was clear to me this evening, and I spent almost the entire night over at the Russian Federation building talking to Boris Yeltsin's aides and associates, and they are all making it clear that they're looking for nothing less than a coalition government. Do you think they'll get it?
Well, I think they can get something very much like that. As a matter of fact, some of the most capable people who once were with Mr. Gorbachev had joined Mr. Yeltsin after Mr. Gorbachev made his turn to the right last fall. So I think it would be quite natural that these people, some of them, are now available for senior positions. However, I think there's some danger in thinking in terms of simply a coalition between the center and the Russian Republic. There are other republics in the Soviet Union, and I think they have to take account of that.
Mr. Grigoriev, let me pick up on a point that Ambassador Matlock made just a second ago, namely he referred to some of the other republics in the Soviet Union. Can we be convinced that this thing is now really over, or is it likely that some of the forces of repression will still be seen, for example, in the Baltic states?
Well, it all depends on what position Gorbachev takes now, because if he really goes for a radical reform, it should be accompanied by a really radical purge among the personnel with the leading cadres and leading party people throughout the country. And if he goes for that, and if he pays credit to Boris Yeltsin and his supporters for making this victory possible, then we can expect good results. If President Gorbachev will try to move slower and achieve compromise, it is quite possible that the reactionary forces might try to stage another coup or make another attempt to destabilize the situation, because they understand that if they lose now, they lose it all, and probably forever.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to take a look at how today's events may impact on the U.S.-Soviet relationship.
It's Sears Labor Day paint sale, and your chance to save $3 a gallon on 2 Weatherbeater exterior paints. Weatherbeater Premium Satin or Flat Finish. Sale ends Saturday, September 7th at Sears.
It's a car born of intelligent engineering. It's 100,000 ideas fused into one. It's powerful, smooth, refined. It's a driver's side airbag and anti-lock brakes. Introducing the all-new 88 Royale LS. Oldsmobile, come see the power of intelligent engineering.
Sir, I want you to stand right here for me, okay? Okay. You go ahead and get your hands out of your pocket. Go ahead and stand face me. Put your heels and toes together. All the way together. All the way together. Okay, you see my pen right here in front of your eyes? Yes. I want you to follow my pen, okay? With your eyes only. Okay, sir. Go ahead and turn around. You have anything in a gun? No. Go ahead and turn around. Give me your hands to the back. Okay, you're under arrest for DWI, sir, okay? We're going to go downtown for intoxilizer test, okay?
Why put up with glasses that just don't fit? LensCrafters has so many ways to fit your snug points. Like snug fit pads that flex to comfortably hug your nose. LensCrafters, better fit for greater comfort. In about an hour.
It's not going to happen to me.
Not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen to me.
I was really shocked when I found out I was infected. I didn't think anything like this could ever happen to me.
Only certain
people get it.
I'm a good example that you can get AIDS from heterosexual sex.
Who cares?
I'm trying to make the best of the time that I have left, because realistically, I really don't know how much time that is.
You could be putting yourself at risk. Call 1-800-342-AIDS.
Tragically, 150,000 Americans will lose their lives this year because of one thing. But not the thing you think.
Hi, this is Chris Lemon. He'll be hosting this week on Into the Night.
On ABC.
Tune in later tonight and see what happens.
I love show business.
It was very early this morning in Kennebunkport, Maine, at President Bush's vacation home when it became clear that events were about to make a complete turnabout here in the Soviet Union. Standing by now in Kennebunkport is ABC's White House correspondent, Britt Hume. Britt, how and what did the president learn?
Well, the first thing he learned was that the tanks outside the Russian Federation building there had turned away, and the long feared or much feared assault there on Boris Yeltsin's headquarters had not occurred. but the early information the president had indicated that there were other elements of the military that were still around and whose intentions were uncertain. So when the president first came out to speak, he indicated that there were hopeful developments, but he was not prepared to say that the coup had failed. Later, after a conversation by telephone with Gorbachev, whom he'd been trying for a couple of days to reach, it was fairly clear to him, and I think by then to everyone, that the coup had failed.
Britt, there must have been a sense of euphoria, not only because of how things turned out, but because President Bush from the very first made it clear that coups can fail.
That's right, and the administration had not seen in the early stages of this coup any of the signs of the kind of brutal efficiency that previous Soviet crackdowns had shown, and that gave them hope that this one might simply not have the stuff that it would need to take charge of the Soviet Union. And of course, there was this sense, and President Bush has said this over and over again for the past couple of days, that these forces of democracy and freedom that have been loosed in the Soviet Union are like genies not easily put back in the bottle. And that certainly seems to have been the case with what happened outside the Russian Federation building, which did indeed seem to make a difference. So the administration had been hoping that the coup would fail, and obviously there is some elation and more relief, I think, tonight that it did.
Britt Hume in Kennebunkport, Maine, thanks very much. Joining us now live from Russell, Kansas, back in the United States, is the Senate Minority Leader, Senator Bob Dole. Senator Dole, if you'll hold on just 1 minute, I also want to introduce our other guest who joins me here in Moscow, a familiar face to many Nightline watchers, television analyst, himself a television commentator, Vladimir Posner. Senator Dole, I'd like to go first of all to you, though, and ask you, does this turn everything back precisely to the way it was before the coup, or have there been some changes in terms of U.S.-Soviet policy now?
Well, I think it was not a great step forward, but at least they averted a great step backward. So we're sort of back where we were. Nothing has been solved. The Soviet Union is still the same. They have very difficult problems. And I think now we need to focus more on principles and less on personalities.
Well, if, for example, President Gorbachev now comes back to the United States, as I rather think he will, and say, you see, I was warning you all along, if you guys didn't give me a whale of a lot of help, then the right-wing forces in this country were going to come after me. They did. Now is the point clear? And if that question were put to you, A, would you agree that the point is clear? And B, do you think we ought to do anything about it?
Well, I think he's now free from those right-wing forces. He's a free man in a sense. I think now he can move dramatically on economic reforms. He can discontinue $4 billion aid to Cuba, and he can really start toward a market economy. If those things are done, then I think you're going to find a willingness on the part of the American people to support Gorbachev, and don't forget the 800-pound gorilla, Boris Yeltsin. He's going to be a big player, too.
Yeah, what do you think the 800-pound gorilla is going to be doing? You think he's going to be a necessary part of this government, part of a coalition, as some of his aides suggested to me tonight?
I don't know, but I think we're going to see more in this administration, more openly and unequivocally siding with the forces of freedom and free enterprise, and that's Boris Yeltsin. That's the Baltic states. That may be others who want their freedom. I think Yeltsin himself is much like Lech Walesa was in the early days. He is larger than life. And he is probably making a decision now to either share power or to assume more power, and that has certain risks for him when he does that.
Vladimir Posner, let me ask you to pick up on a suggestion that Senator Dole made. He made it as more than a suggestion. It was really a statement of fact, namely that Gorbachev doesn't have to worry about the right anymore, that he doesn't have to worry about the conservative factions in this country. Correct?
I would say basically yes, basically correct, provided that finally Gorbachev decides that he has to support the left or the radicals or the progressives, call them what you will. I mean, he is to blame to a certain extent for what happened. These men were handpicked by Gorbachev. When Yanayev was nominated as vice president, the Soviet parliament voted against him on the first round. Gorbachev insisted that this man be vice president, which shows a lack of judgment insofar as character and people are concerned. I think he's going to have a tough time.
Senator Dole, the fact of the matter is that Gorbachev kept sort of veering to the left, veering to the right, and you think his veering days are over now? Is that what you were saying to me before?
No, I agree with Mr. Posner said. I think now he needs to embrace the reformers, embrace the Yeltsins and the others in Moscow and Leningrad and in other republics in the Soviet Union, and go straight ahead. And if he does that, he's going to find a receptive audience in the United States. But again, I don't think anybody knows here just what role Boris Yeltsin will play. And I remember the last time he came to Washington in June of this year, he wasn't met by a big entourage at the airport. I met him there with an Assistant Secretary of State, and that was the greeting delegation. I think the next time he comes to the United States, I probably won't be able to get near him.
Vladimir, do you think that Boris Yeltsin can be made palatable to Mikhail Gorbachev? They personally do not care for each other a great deal.
Well, I think the chemistry is wrong, and you can't change that chemistry. But I think Gorbachev understands, and perhaps it's painful to him, that Yeltsin saved his skin. He has to acknowledge that, and it's hard to do, especially if you don't like someone. But I think he's intelligent enough to realize he has to work with Yeltsin as long as he can work. And I'm frankly not that sure that now Gorbachev is going to be around for that long. Simply, he really doesn't have the support of the people. He doesn't come out of this as a hero. And as I say, he's going to have to answer for having appointed these people and having put so much trust in them. So I think there may be a new ball game ahead, a very good ball game, as a matter of fact, but a new one, and where Gorbachev may not be a big player anymore.
One more quick question to you, Senator Dole, and that is, just as Vladimir Posner was saying that Gorbachev has had a hard time getting along with Boris Yeltsin, so too President Bush has had a wonderful time getting along with Mikhail Gorbachev. Do you think he made the mistake of becoming too fixated on the personality?
Well, I don't believe so, but I think if in fact there is any second guessing, I think now if we just stick to our principles and maybe avoid the personalities, it'll be a better course for the administration to follow. Because I think Mr. Posner is right. I think it's going to be hard for Gorbachev to claim he was the victim when many of these people were appointed by Mr. Gorbachev. But it's going to be a very different relationship, I think, in many ways. But let's see what they do with their economy. Let's see what they do with aid to Cuba. And if they're willing to make sharp changes, we're willing to help.
Senator Dole, thank you very much. Vladimir Posner, thank you. When we come back, we'll take a look at how the Soviet Union people and their new taste for freedom and their new experience with freedom made a difference.
Did you know that when Alexander Graham Bell was about to invent the telephone, he stopped work because he ran out of money? Today at AT&T, we understand how important money is to a small business. So we developed AT&T Pro Watts, our discount calling plan that gives you AT&T quality at extremely competitive prices. At AT&T, almost half our business comes from small business. When you succeed, we succeed.
The first time I switched pain relievers, it was from aspirin to Tylenol. Then recently, I switched again, from Tylenol acetaminophen to Advil. You see, I got these really pounding headaches, and I found Tylenol didn't always get rid of all the pain. So I tried Advil and found that for my really tough headaches, 2 Advil worked better than 2 extra-strength Tylenol tablets, better than extra-strength Tylenol caplets, better than Tylenol gel caps. For my tough headaches, Advil just works better. Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered this 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
My mama always told me, Tony, if you want to be successful, be a good listener.
I'll bet this 22 is going to match the slugs we pulled out of 2 dead cops.
I want to make a statement.
I don't want to hear it.
Be polite to foreigners.
We, the people of Earth, welcome you.
Get into the Psychwater County. And always wear clean underwear. Well, you'll have to trust me on that one.
The Commish, coming this fall on ABC.
Hey, Ma, I finally made it.
It's a hit. The funniest thing I've seen since Soap.
A woman. Classic features.
The show that everybody will be talking about around the cooler.
I'm not ready to be tied down.
Except in bed.
It's Terry Garr.
Well.
And it's gonna be outrageous.
Flat-chested. A man. Oh.
From the creators of Soap and Golden Girls.
And quite a man, may I add.
Good and Evil coming this fall.
It's a sadly familiar scene. Those resisting tyranny going into the streets and massive force being brought to bear against them, bloodshed, and then silence. Only this time it was different. This time the people won. ABC Nightline correspondent Jeff Greenfield takes a look at what it is about the new understanding of freedom that the Soviet people appear to have gained.
Tiananmen Square, Beijing, in the spring of 1989. Tens of thousands rally for democracy. Moscow, in the summer of 1991. Tens of thousands rally for democracy. 2 years ago, a single act of defiance symbolized the spirit of freedom. But ultimately, the tanks and the guns prevailed. Freedom lost. 2 days ago, a Soviet tank nearly rolled over a resistor. But in the end, the tanks and the guns retreated. Freedom won. What was the difference? Why did the Chinese authorities succeed in crushing the democracy movement while the Soviet coup collapsed after 60 hours? Insufficient cunning or brutality may be part of the explanation, but there is another key. In China 2 years ago, freedom was little more than a hope, a desire. In the Soviet Union, it had been something that people lived, breathed, tasted. In China, the dissenters had a symbol, the goddess of democracy, and they had a dream. But they had little else. No history, no free institutions to help them fight their fight. In the Soviet Union, it was different.
This is a product of perestroika. And I was born, in this sense, as president, as a result of the political process and democratic process.
Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev, talking with Peter Jennings 3 weeks ago.
Society has the possibility to resolve any problem, even to have a different president, if it wants.
A commonplace observation in America, but an unthinkable thought just a few years ago in the Soviet Union. Yet the fact is that the Soviet people had seen their leader arguing, persuading, debating, not just ordering. They had seen him being attacked in public, on national television. They had gone to the polls and chosen their representatives and some of their leaders in a secret ballot. And they had heard the president they did not elect promise to submit to that process.
He must be elected by the whole people, by popular election.
And slowly but surely, fear began to be put aside. When Gorbachev went to the Baltics to urge them not to secede, he argued his case in the streets with citizens who did not agree. Even with the military force that followed, that was a very different way for a Soviet leader to behave. And in 1990, on May Day, the most sacred day on the Soviet calendar, Gorbachev and his fellow leaders were booed and jeered. Other freedoms began to take root. 2 years ago, a Russian Orthodox church service like this one was held in the bowels of the Kremlin for the first time in more than 70 years. This in a country that long taught that religion was the opiate of the masses. Newspapers, radio, and television stations began to say what they wanted to say, not what the government told them to say. Trade unions began organizing, even striking, to demand better wages, better working conditions. In the past, a strike against a worker state was a contradiction. In other times, dissenters such as Andrei Sakharov were jailed or exiled, their every move and phone conversation tracked by the KGB. But by the end of his life, Sakharov was an honored citizen, fighting, almost with his last breath, for a freer nation. And workers had begun to experience the heady notion of working for themselves, not for the state. Indeed, it was even possible for a militant anti-communist to be elected the president of the most populous republic in the nation and to proclaim his intentions in no uncertain terms.
And I shall not turn aside from the path which we've embarked upon. I shall fight against the system which for 70 years has brought our country into such a miserable and denigrated situation.
In other times, the death of a leader or his removal from power meant nothing of consequence. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But this time the Soviet people knew what they were in danger of losing. They had leaders and institutions that had the will and the strength to resist the usurpers.
I think they underestimated the power of the people. They underestimated what a taste of democracy and freedom brings.
For decades, some Soviet experts have argued that there is something deep in the Russian soul that fears freedom, that longs for the strong hand of a strong leader. But maybe those experts were wrong. Maybe when people get a taste of freedom, it gives them an appetite for more, and the will to resist those who would wipe that freedom away. I'm Jeff Greenfield for Nightline in New York.
By sheer coincidence, the U.S. Librarian of Congress, Dr. James Billington, who is also a Soviet scholar, has been here in the Soviet Union throughout the events of the past week. Dr. Billington joins me here live in Moscow. It must have been an extraordinary experience for you. You've been studying this country for years, and you are here for what may have been the most dramatic events of a generation.
It really was an extraordinary event. It's one of those defining moments, I think, in history when you see people you've been studying all your life not only come to life, but in effect define, I think, a whole future course for their country. It's been an extraordinary couple of days.
And you have spent most of those days, I understand, with a rather wide spectrum of the Soviet public.
Yes, I was here to attend two conferences, a librarians conference and also a conference of returned Russian emigres. They both opened on the day of the putsch, so I've been seeing a large number of Russians, and it's been extraordinary, in a sense, the ordinariness of life, the sense that that this was sort of unreal, that it was surreal. This has been a kind of surreal stage for a couple of years now, and that the thing that was real was the conversations and the movement among the people focused on the White House and focused on the defense of it, and also on the articulation.
When you talk about the White House, you're talking about the Russian...
their White House,
Their
yeah.
White House, the Russian Federation.
So at the same time, there was the feeling that what has been unreal for years was continuing in a sense with the coup, and that reality, the re-legitimization of authority that's been coming up from below and throughout the provinces, there was a tremendous lack of support for this in all cities throughout the Soviet Union. And the word of that was coming in through these... I was on a talk show just the night before, call-in talk show, just the night before the coup in this little kind of small closet. There's this whole network of internal communication that has grown up, that has really transformed the nature of consciousness in this country, and that was dramatized by the success and by the enormous and wide spectrum of popular resistance to what was attempted.
One more quick question, yeah. Dr. Billington. Do you believe, as we have been suggesting throughout much of this program, that the seeds of democracy really have taken hold now?
I think they have, although it's important to remember that you're dealing with the heritage of the... I think this was the fever break that determines whether the patient will live or die. And I think the patient has a chance to live. There's an enormous number of practical problems that remain to be solved. But I think not just the seeds of democracy, there's a movement forward to democracy and also backward to religion. The role of the rediscovery of their deeper spiritual roots is very important. Gleb Yakunin, for instance, the world's greatest linguist. There was a whole new cast of characters took part in this, and we'll be hearing from them in the future, because many of the old politicians of all stripes didn't stand up in the day or so when it wasn't clear what was going to happen. At the opening of this conference, somebody said, "Let us stand up for the legal government of Russia." And those who stood up will be remembered. Those who did not stand up at that time and will be forgotten and cast aside.
Dr. Billington, thank you very much. When we come back, the view of an editorial cartoonist, Renan Lurie.
I want to show you why my Dirt Devil is the world's best-selling corded hand vacuum. Okay, Sam. Now, the toughest test for any vacuum is pet hair. So I gave my Dirt Devil a strong motor and a revolving brush just like an upright. And if it's powerful enough to clean up this mess, imagine what it can do with a dirty carpet. You could say Dirt Devil is man's best friend. Well, almost. So get a Dirt Devil and put the power of an upright in the palm of your hand.
Sometimes it takes the eye and the skill of an editorial cartoonist to capture the full flavor of events such as those that we have experienced over the past 24 hours. Here once again, the work of Renan Lurie.
Congratulations, Gorby. It's a democracy.
Just a reminder, we think that Mikhail Gorbachev will be addressing the Russian parliament in a matter of a few hours. And I will be reporting again from Moscow tomorrow for all of us here at ABC News in Moscow. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel. Good night.
This has been Nightline. If you wish a videocassette version of Nightline, the cost is $14.98 plus $3.95 shipping and handling. If you wish a printed transcript of this or any Nightline broadcast, please send $4 to Nightline Transcripts, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007. Or call 212-227-READ.
Nightline is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
America's watching ABC.